pioneers modeling diversity as a growth strategy. As Andre said, my name is Amber Guild. I am the CEO of Mccann, New York. I have been in the advertising, publishing, creative industry since I was 19. My first job was as a secretary. They called us secretaries, and like seriously. And I could tell you the teenage version of myself would be really proud that 28 years later, I sit here at a conference called Blackweek. I never would have guessed that when I was 19 as one of the only other people of color in the ad industry. And I'm sitting here with these two trailblazing women. So I could not be more excited to introduce you to these two women. I've got two executives who have prioritized and continue to prioritize and model diversity as a growth strategy for their business. I have Charisse Hughes. She is the Chief Growth Officer at Kellanova. Kellanova, formerly Kellogg Company, right? That is a new change. She's responsible for driving the growth agenda for the company through leadership of global brands, innovation, R&D, commercial advanced analytics, marketing excellence, and licensing and cultural initiatives. That is a lot. Welcome, Charisse.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber.
It's so wonderful to have you. And I have Allison Stadd. She is our SVP of Brand, Culture, and Media at Shipt. For those of you who haven't recently ordered something from Target, it is a same-day shipping delivery service that is owned by Target. But she has over 2 decades of experience with domain expertise in building scaled, consumer-obsessed, digitally grounded brands across diverse industries and audiences, from salads and burgers to dog toys to beer and now retail tech. Please welcome Allison. So as I said, I could not be more honored to sit here with these two women who have pioneered new ways forward in their organizations, in their industries, especially at a time when DEI is being deprioritized around so many organizations. But I think what's really wonderful about these two is that they know that ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion is not only the right thing to do, it is the only thing to do for growth. So we're going to learn a lot from them today. We're going to learn about what they've been doing, what they've spearheaded. We're going to get some personal reflections so that we can learn from them. But I actually want to start off with maybe more of a personal question and maybe give us a little bit of context for how you two are entering today and how you're entering this conversation. If you were to pick one word that describes 2024 for you, what would it be and why? I'll start with you, Charisse.
Thanks, Amber. And thank you all for that amazing applause. I cannot see any of you. The lights are bright. So bright.
We cannot see a thing.
So hopefully, you guys are out there and you're connecting with me. But the word that comes to mind for me, it's both personal and professional. And that word is Nova. And you heard Amber introduce me. I work for Kellanova, which was formerly the Kellogg Company. The company is the result of a spinoff. So on October 2nd, 2023, I had the opportunity to be one of the founding members of Kellanova, which is a new $13 billion company. The word Nova, by the way, is Latin for new. You probably all know that. And so, I'm really excited to be a part of this amazing company. We are the derivation of, or the result of a spinoff that left the snacking portion of the Kellogg Company business. So we spun off our North America cereal business, and the RemainCo is Kellanova, and that includes brands like Pringles, like Cheez-It, Pop-Tarts, Rice Krispie Treats, as well as an international cereal business. So Nova defines the year that I've had because it's all new territory. We're on a growth journey, and I'm excited to tell you all about what we're doing in the space of inclusion and leveraging multiculturalism to drive growth, impact, and the legacy that I want to leave at this amazing company.
That's great. Nova, love that. Allison?
Thank you so much for having me and for the warm welcome. Echoing Charisse that we are completely blind up here, but we feel the energy and we're feeling off of each other as well. So on that theme of newness, I would say my word is family, because I just welcomed my second son into our family last spring. Thank you. Who actually turned 6 months today. So I'm in a season of a very high demand personal and work life, and I'm really grateful to Shipt for being so empowering and encouraging for families of all types. So that's where I'm at.
It's wonderful. Alice and I were just talking backstage. My daughter's 15, and I have a 13-year-old son, and I was telling her, I go, I don't know if this is going to be helpful for you to hear or not, but when my kids were 4 and 2, which is about what you have 3.5 and 6 months, for the parents out there in the audience, it really was the hardest time. It was the hardest time. And when you're, navigating your career, and it ends up being the time when you're kind of making some big moves career-wise, and you have these little things that need you, and they need you to live. Like, you have to feed them and clothe them and make sure they don't fall. And it's some of the hardest time, and that the thing that really gets you through is your village. And sometimes your village is your work too, which is really wonderful that you feel that now. That's great.
So clearly I'm the senior member of this panel. I have
19-year-olds
that are in college.
Yes.
So, we'll just leave it there.
So you're living your new life now that they've launched.
I am.
Yes.
That is truth.
I can see it up ahead. It's coming.
Empty nesting is a thing, and it can be fabulous.
It can be fabulous.
So,
all right, I'm taking notes.
Something to look forward to.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so a little bit more about kind of from a personal perspective. As you reflect on your career to date, what's an experience you had early on that you think has most impacted or influenced your leadership approach now? And Charisse, I'll start with you.
So my career, I spent about 15 years of my career in cosmetics. I started at Avon, and then I went to the Estee Lauder companies. And one of the most memorable experiences and gratifying was I joined the Estee Lauder company working as a senior director on the face and eye categories of makeup. And an opportunity came open where I could make a lateral move. Well, an opportunity came open, let's leave it at that, in a flagship category, which is skincare. Now, I had previously worked in skincare at Avon, so I had that depth of experience, but obviously in a sort of different channel versus where Estee Lauder was. And I was offered a lateral move. And my boss at the time, who I still love and adore, not just because of this advocacy that he actually did for me, but just because of the human being that he is, he said to me, like, why would you take a lateral move? Why go back and ask for the promotion? I had been at the company for 2 years. I had skincare in my background. I demonstrated that I could be successful in the category and understood it, but I was being offered a lateral.
Yeah.
And so what that taught me, and I did go back, and I actually got the opportunity to lead that category of business, which I think was a pivotal moment in my career and kind of set me on this trajectory. I ended up, my last role at the Estee Lauder companies was senior VP, leading all 3 categories. But what it said to me, number one, was you have to have very strong advocates and people who are in your corner. They often can be your bosses, but you have to demonstrate that you are committed, you're hardworking, and that you deserve that opportunity, right? I think the second thing is advocating for yourself. It's so important that you understand what you bring to the table, that you have the confidence to go back and make the case on behalf of yourself. And then the third piece is being that light for someone else and how important it is to pull others along. So, I'm so grateful for him, but I also want to, as I reflect and being a leader today, I want to make sure that I am also shining lights on people who may not get as much, who maybe they're introverts and they aren't as expressive about the great work that they're doing, and I can be that sponsor, that person who shines a light on their great work and encourages them and pushes them to go beyond what their expectations were at the time. So.
That's great. For those that are younger in their careers, that moment when you went back to advocate for yourself, I mean, what is going through your
It was
head?
scary.
Yeah.
I mean, so the woman who I went back to, she was the president of the brand, of the Estee Lauder brand. And so I went back to her and the senior VP, who I ended up succeeding. And yeah, I was scared out of my mind, but I practiced.
Yes.
My boss practiced with me, and
great.
I had my talking points, and I was prepared.
Yeah.
And I had belief in myself.
Yeah.
Even though prior to that, I didn't. I wasn't so confident that I shouldn't just take the opportunity as it was presented to me.
That's great. Thank you. Allison?
Yeah, so building off of the example of having a conversation with someone really senior that sort of turned into an inflection point, at one of my first roles, I was a senior manager on the marketing team, and I had an opportunity to connect one-on-one with the CEO of the business. And we had a very inspiring conversation, energizing. I said to him, I am inspired to become a vice president for you on your team one day. He was very supportive of that and encouraging, and took a Post-it note out and said, write that commitment down, and we'll keep it in my office drawer here so you remember, in the years to come when you've reached that milestone, it can help you get there. Like, sounds great. So it was sort of a high five moment. I was really fired up, and I left his office. The next day, my boss, who was the VP and reported to the CEO, called an impromptu one-on-one with me and said, I'm very uncomfortable that you had that conversation. It doesn't make sense to me that you would express that desire. I'm in that role. And that was the first time that I really took a step back to sort of existentially examine leadership. And what does it mean to lead? And what does it mean to be in a position of power? This was a white man. And I, at the time and now, am very aware that I'm a white woman. But it was really an opportunity for me to take a step back and examine, how did I want to lead? How did I want to show up? How did my desire to embody power threaten this man and his power? And it actually was a real motivation for me to start to build out my own principles and philosophy around leadership, really start to center my desire to be an ally and an advocate. And I left that role soon after for a leadership position that eventually turned into that vice president role that I wanted.
Congratulations.
And he got fired.
And he got fired? And he got fired? Oh my God, that's great.
So that's what stands out to me.
But it's so true. We learn just as much from those ahead of us or above us that do not embody the leadership qualities and skills that we value as we do from those that do. And I think that's really important, because in the moment it could feel like it's so overwhelming and going to stop you. But to actually use those moments to think about what that means for you and who you want to be is really very powerful. And he got fired. So, all right. So I want to continue. I want to continue on from a kind of practical perspective of learning from both of you and learning from what you have led in your organizations. I think what we have to remember is that no matter really what business you're in, we're still in the human business, right? There are human beings at every aspect of this, and if we really think about diversity, equity, inclusion, again, it's not just the right thing to do, it is the only thing to do for growth. Then it becomes about how we're unlocking human possibilities, right, for business opportunities. And I think both of your organizations and what you have led have shown us that. So Charisse, I'd love you've worked across many industries. You talked about them from beauty to consumer goods. You've led major shifts in brand perception and growth. What unique challenges have you faced in these shifts? Is there an example you can share where the key to growth was in unlocking new audiences and any learnings you can share on navigating an organization through that. And I know that's a lot. That's a lot in the question.
It is a lot. So let me just, let me dive in. So the Estee Lauder companies, back when I started there, let's see, it probably was about 50 years old. And Mrs. Estee Lauder died, I want to say in the 2003-ish time frame. So one of the things working on that brand, when you're working on a founder-led brand where the founder is no longer in existence, you can also, you kind of have an identity crisis. Like, who are we? Who are we aspiring to be? What are the values of this company? And the brand, very strong in skincare, but viewed as being like your grandmother's brand, and for sort of white women, not necessarily relevant for a diverse population. And so in order to reinvigorate and not be just your grandmother's brand, we really leaned into deeper understanding, and as population was shifting. I mean, it started to shift it's been shifting for the past 20 years or so. And so we were thinking, how do we diversify beyond this population that is buying this product today? How do we appeal to their needs and desires? And so the first thing that we did was we leaned into a diverse set of spokespeople, an Asian woman, Lu Wen, who's from China, a woman of color, Joan Smalls, who is both Puerto Rican and Black, and another woman, Hillary Rhoda. And so we understood the shifting dynamic from a demographic standpoint, and we used that insight to connect more deeply. So it wasn't about lines and wrinkles, it was about uneven skin tone and hyperpigmentation, so understanding those concerns and those issues. So that's one example. The other example I'll give you, of course, is in my current role as Chief Growth Officer for Kellanova, formerly Kellogg. So I joined the company in 2020, and obviously we all know what happened in 2020. The reason I joined the company is because at the time I was working for Pandora Jewelry, and I love that brand. But it's also a Danish brand. And so you can imagine that being at a Danish company in the midst of 2020, when the US is in a deep, deep turmoil, despair, anger, frustration, was a very difficult place to sit, because there was a true lack of understanding on, what Americans and for sure what Black Americans were experiencing. So for me, that was somewhat of an existential moment. I also had a big birthday that year, so I was really conflicted around, okay, what am I doing? How am I spending my time? What is my action? What's my legacy? How am I going to kind of lean into this moment to make greater impact on my community? I ended up taking an opportunity at Kellogg/Kellanova. And I did that because the company has a very long history of being committed to inclusion and to purpose. Right. And so I joined the company, and one of the very first things we did is to ask ourselves, how are we educating and training our marketers to understand the communities that they serve? And so we developed, in partnership with CN Plus, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're an amazing multicultural agency that partnered with us to create a training program called the K-Way of Inclusive Marketing. And it really was digging really deep. And what we learned is that the population, that multicultural population, has $4 trillion of spending power. And so that opportunity is, 4 trillion, okay? Do I need to say more? So when you go and talk to your CFO and CEO, the conversation is real because they're real dollars. There's real opportunity here. And being able to use that data, that insights, that understanding of these populations to engage more deeply was our opportunity. That was the challenge. Yeah. And so that program, that training, sorry for the long-winded response, but that program became an award-winning program, but also helped us to truly unlock those populations as it relates to our specific brands and connecting more deeply with with the communities. So yeah, lots of new foods came to market. Yep. More relevant and engaging communications and communication and executional plans, whether it be Morningstar Farms or things that we did with Cheez-It. So really, I think probably one of the most important initiatives that we've done in the last 5 or 7 years.
That's great. I remember, and you probably remember this too, when I started in advertising, there would be 3 different briefs on the table. There would be a general market brief, general market, an African American brief, and a Hispanic brief. And there's a couple of organizations still that have that set up. And I just ask us, and I ask this audience, and I ask people outside of this room, what is general market?
Right.
Allison?
Amber,
I didn't mean that for
friends.
Allison. It was a dramatic pause transition.
I thought we were cool.
So Allison, you've built consumer-obsessed brands across a wide range of industries, from food to tech. What is your secret to keeping marketing human-centric? And we said that earlier, right? It's about human possibilities and ensuring that it forges real connections with a diverse set of audiences. So how do you think about that?
Totally. Really quickly, I just want to speak to the point that you just made regarding general market. I have a really strong belief in doing away with personas for that reason. I believe in psychographics and mindset first, and then you can back out of that to find demos as needed for things like media buying and partnership decisions and whatnot. But I really firmly believe like mindset, attitudinal attributes across lots of different types of demographics is the way to think about target audience. But in answer to your question, how have I thought about building human-centric brands? So 3 quick things. And the first one, I just want to share this quote that I can't stop thinking about from a conversation that I had with a junior product designer on our team at Shipt, not on my team. Someone reached out. I always encourage folks to reach out to just get 15 minutes on my calendar, talk about career growth, professional development, whatever it may be. And so we had never chatted before, but we had this conversation that turned out to be very impactful. And it was through the lens of her experience as a neurodiverse person of color. We were talking about allyship, and she said, with respect to someone like me who wants to continue to practice and learn about and embody being an ally and an advocate, if you aren't uncomfortable, you're not really listening. If you're not uncomfortable in some way, you are not listening. And I can't stop thinking about that quote, which brings me to my first answer to the question, which is really listen to your actual consumers and your target audience. We have a few ways that we do that at Shipt. We have a quarterly testimonial time where we listen to and actually watch video clips of our real users. We have an opportunity to put faces and names and sounds to these actual people who are using our services. I've done a shadowing session with my leadership team for our customer service team, which has actually won for 2 years in a row Newsweek's Best Customer Service for our category, so they're award-winning. I've had coffee before with a top shopper in my area, so just finding these opportunities to actually, even at the most senior levels of your organization, get down into the weeds and really connect and hear from directly the people that are using your services or could be your target audience to do that. The second thing, relatedly, back to allyship, is really practicing that internally and externally. So how do you think about being an ally on behalf of your target users? How do you think about embodying empathy and curiosity, which to me are the 2 components of allyship, with respect to the people that you're marketing to? How do you position yourself as an ally, not just internally for your peers, your more junior colleagues, people on other teams, but also for the market? And then the third aspect is, I would say, making sure that people of all different backgrounds and life experiences can access your products and services successfully. They can have an excellent experience doing that, and they see themselves reflected in the work that you're putting out in the world. So shout out to, I think, Maya, who is here, and Malika on her team, who run our influencer program. and have ensured that at any given time, about half of our influencers are diverse, so that our social feeds can actually reflect the people that we're marketing to. So as opposed to, yes, shout out, Maya Malika, as opposed to just featuring, one-off heritage months or diversity activities that the DEI team is doing, which are incredibly important, just making sure that that's really integrated in an evergreen fashion into our work.
I love that point about making sure that all audiences have access. Because you're right, it's one thing to position or understand and have insights, but to then making sure that everyone has access to your product or service. That's where we need to get to. Okay, so I was at an event, I think it was actually last week. Aaliyah was there, who Allison works with. And it seemed provocative to me, or provocative to the audience, thought was thrown out in the room. And it was thrown out by an incredible woman and former CMO. And she said, and her provocation was, that we need to have more CMOs and those from brand and marketing backgrounds become CEOs. And that felt provocative for that room because that's not normally the track, right? That's not a normal track. The COO becomes the CEO or the CFO, all of these things around operations and finances. But the CMO and the brand folk, I mean, they're really always thinking about the human on the other side. And they're thinking about the brand. And the reality is that building a brand, this is a growth discussion, builds business. And so we have two marketers right here who have been building brands, and they have been building businesses, and they've been growing the businesses that they work for. And I would love to give them a moment to do something that we don't typically do, which is I would love for them to very proudly talk about their successes and what they have driven. And don't be shy. We don't do this enough. We don't talk about what we've done and what we've led. And I'd love to give you both a moment just to talk about, as you think about your career, what you've helped to drive that has grown business.
Am I starting?
You're starting.
Oh my God, this is like how much time?
Are you uncomfortable?
So no, I'm actually not uncomfortable, but it's just running down the list of what's most important. But I think about my career in sort of three buckets. One is, what's the business impact that I've made, and then what is the sort of impact to the world or contribution to the world, and then what is the people impact that I've made. So if I think about like the products and services that I brought to market, first and foremost, one of the coolest first jobs that I ever had was being a marketing manager, assistant or associate marketing manager for Ralph Lauren Intimates. And this was when Ralph Lauren was launching intimate apparel for women in department stores. So I actually launched that brand into department stores. So they already had the men's intimates or underwear or whatever you want to call it. And I got the opportunity to launch that business. Now that it no longer exists. But certainly that was a flagship moment within my career to actually get a chance to be exposed to, fashion. I think that's what triggered me, or sort of triggered, I shouldn't say triggered, that's not a good word, but encouraged me or inspired me to pursue an opportunity within beauty. So that's one that I'm really proud of because, it had never been done before. Many examples across cosmetics and the time at Estee Lauder. I probably would say the most impactful would be the relaunch of Advanced Night Repair. Oh. And what was so incredible about that relaunch is that it was diversifying the audience. It was doubling that business. It was a profit driver for the company. So really proud of that. I, from there, went to Pandora Jewelry, where I had the opportunity to launch an e-commerce business in the US and Canada. and then lead a digital transformation of that business to connect beyond just the charm bracelet and to diversify their business into rings and earrings and necklaces and the like, and broaden it to a full jewelry and more relevant jewelry brand. And now it's the #1 jewelry brand globally. And then, if I think about from there.
I feel like she just casually dropped that it's now the #1 global jewelry brand, right? That was casual. It's amazing.
And then, I think the things that I'm proud of in my role now are, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that, I got to ring the bell as one of the founders of Kellanova. I mean, that is,
Woo!
I'm,
That's great.
I mean, I was the only little black girl up there, like.
I love it. That's great.
So that is a real proud moment. And then, of course, the business impact, for sure, we're driving growth. We are, building Pringles to a $3 billion and beyond brand. We're going to get Cheez-It almost to $2 billion. And we've got, a list of global brands that we're driving. We're driving expansion of Cheez-It. Sorry, I could go on and on. Sorry. But then, what I really want to say I'm proud of in terms of the purpose work as well as the impact on people. On the people side, and I know you're going to ask this question later, but it really fits here, so I have to say it. One of my values and a quote that I live by is, "To whom much is given, much is required." My mother is from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. She was one of 6 million Black people who migrated from Arkansas to Chicago as an educator. And she pulled a whole lot of people along. A lot of people pulled her along. And I believe that my responsibility, my existence on this earth, is about who I can pull along. And so I really invest my time and energy in mentorship, probably way more. I sort of commit myself much more than I should or can, but I do because it's so important. And I know that I didn't get here by myself, and others can't get to this seat and beyond without help. So that matters a whole lot to me. And then I'm very, very proud of the work that we do at Kellogg/Kellanova in terms of sustainability, in terms of our commitment to sustainable farming, to providing access to our foods to those that are in need, that are challenged from a food insecurity standpoint. So really just very, very proud of that, and collectively of the team that I work with, because as I said, none of us is here alone and can do this by ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. Great.
That's awesome.
And again, another proof point that this is a human business, right? And that growth has to come, it will come, if you're thinking about it through the lens of inclusion, if you're thinking about it through the lens of access and diversity. It is a business imperative. Thank you. Allison.
We can talk about Cheez-Its all you want.
I know,
because
my kids are helping
I was
Cheez-Its,
going to
by the
say,
way.
my
Yes.
house is keeping Kellanova in business.
Thank you.
So speaking of snacks, Amber spoke a little bit about Shipt, but for those that are not as familiar, so we power same-day shopping and delivery for our parent company Target and the Circle 360 loyalty program that launched back in the spring, but also about 100 other retailers through our marketplace. So you can download the Shipt app or go to shipt.com and get groceries and household essentials, makeup, pet care, all types of things that you need that day, shopped and delivered by a gig worker. And what we're known for are our high-quality shoppers. So that's who I mentioned. I like to have coffee with top shoppers there. We're a two-sided marketplace. So my team is responsible for acquiring and engaging both the members who use our services and also the shoppers and drivers who do the actual shopping and delivery. So you can imagine in 2020, the sort of massive proliferation of the need for same-day shopping and delivery. A lot of people weren't able to, or it wasn't safe to, go shop for themselves in store. So fast forward to 2022, when I started at Shipt, the business was in a completely different context and landscape. And so since then, it's been a really high velocity time for our marketing team at Shipt, in a really exciting way to sort of think about centering the business in a post-COVID environment where the business sort of had this massive takeoff and is still very much a high demand category. But what does it mean for us to stand apart from some of our competitors? How do we lean into our differentiator? How do we position ourselves? How do we maintain and build really valuable relationships with folks? So taking a thread from Charisse's sort of 3 buckets of her work, I've thought about my remit at Shipt in 3 categories: the brand, the business, and the team. And so 3 quick kind of wins to celebrate in each of those from the last really exciting, fast-paced, 2.5 years or so. From the brand perspective, last summer we launched our new brand platform. It was the largest creative campaign that we had done to date at Shipt, and it featured the one and only Issa Rae, which was incredible. It was a 360-degree omni-channel campaign, really bringing to market this platform of centering the shopper as really the sort of secret sauce, as we say, for Shipt. In addition to that, we featured a creative internship aspect of the campaign with Howard University. So selected 4 students, our amazing CMO Aaliyah's alma mater too, so you should connect. So the students, as part of our launch of student membership, since the campaign was timed for Back to College, got to be mentored by Issa, by Aaliyah, and actually create, write, edit, shoot, star, and direct their own version of the main spot themselves. And then we debuted that spot with a live event with Issa in Times Square here in New York, and allowed the students to be surprised with seeing their work on a billboard in Times Square. So all of that collectively launched last summer and really just over-delivered on all of the metrics of success. So we meaningfully increased awareness and consideration for Shipt. We achieved and actually surpassed our commercial goals for student membership acquisition and engagement. We got almost 2 billion PR impressions and really established this fruitful relationship with Issa that's continued since then. So that's kind of the brand win. From a business perspective, more recently, over July 4th, and I take less than no credit for this because I was in the midst of newborn time on parental leave, but there was a TikTok creator named Hannah who posted a video that ended up going viral, had about 30 million views, about a mishap with a competitor that will not be named, Instacart. She was on a family road trip and needed same-day delivery, a couple of items for her toddlers that were actually really essential, like a pack and play. And those of you that have traveled with young kids know things like that are actually, they're not nice to haves, they're must-haves. And so the service, understandably so, things happen, but they weren't able to get those items to her, and our awesome social team saw that video, jumped in, we saved the day, we were able to deliver her items to her and more, and built a relationship with her, provided her with a promo code that immediately drove almost $50,000 in gross merchandise value. We gained 6,000 TikTok followers from that one interaction. We increased app downloads week over week by 50%. So we were able to just insert ourselves into culture for very low cost and kind of create this immediate economic impact. So that was really exciting, and we're trying to sort of turn that into a playbook that can be replicated. The last one from a team perspective is what I'm most proud of and is most important to me, which is when I started 2.5 years ago, I inherited a talented team that was a bit disengaged, wasn't sort of right places, right people, right work, had never been structured in this way before. So my role sort of brought a few different teams together in a singular way that hadn't been structured that way previously. So really good talent just needed to sort of be corralled, create culture, kind of lay some guardrails, build together all of those types of elements of leadership. And in just a year, I was able to increase our engagement and inclusion scores from well below company average to over company average and actually over industry average. So that is far and away the most important result.
Great.
Thank you. Versus, I mean, I love Issa and TikTok, but that one was most important.
That's wonderful. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, both of these women accredited the teams and the people to the successes. And that says a lot about both of you and your leadership. I also, though, want us to remember to take the time to be proud of your wins. We don't do that enough. If we have a win, we move on very quickly to the next thing. And we should stand in our pride. We should stand in what we've done and be comfortable with that. And I know from a gender perspective, oftentimes women are least likely to do that. So I wanted to make sure on this stage we got to model that for everyone in this room. So thank you very much for that. This may end up being our last question. It wasn't supposed to be our last question, but timing-wise. I wanted to talk a little bit about things that we've learned. Yes, I'm getting the sign. I wanted to talk a little bit about things that we've learned, and I wanted to talk a little bit about our identity. Oftentimes our identity walks into a room before we do. And I often have younger folks ask me how I navigate that and how I overcome that. And what's been interesting for me is that as I get older, I find that the rooms look less and less. They didn't look much like me to begin with, but they look even less now, right? But I also find that as I get older and as I get more experience, that I am leaning more into my identity. I'm feeling more comfortable of who I am. I'm not in that room to change your perception about me. It's not my job. I'm exhausted. It's distracting. My job is to be great at my job. So I'm curious for the two of you as you're navigating your careers and your lives. How have you navigated this in your career? And has this been an evolution for you as well?
I mean, it's 100% an evolution. I think it's funny, because I started my career in a female-oriented space, I probably paid less attention to it because I was always like a girl's girl. So being around women, it sort of felt comfortable and almost like I was at home. And it wasn't until I actually left and went to Pandora, and then now being at Kellogg and Kellanova, that I really have felt this sort of imposter syndrome and not necessarily being comfortable in my skin and a lack of confidence in certain situations because it was much more male dominated. I in cases just wasn't clearly communicating or wasn't able to land my point or confidently express myself. But to your point about as you mature and as you get older and as your kids go off to college, no, honestly, you start to employ, at least for me, one of the things that I've done, and I've had lots of fireside chats with people, but there was this one anecdote that I want to leave you all with, which is I read a book by a woman named Shelley Archambault called Unapologetically Ambitious. And she was sort of a pioneer in the tech space in Silicon Valley like years ago. And she gave some great suggestions on how to kind of overcome imposter syndrome. And a couple of recommendations if you're confronted with this or facing it. One was having like positive self-talk, but more in the ways of saying, like I would say before I went into a meeting, Charisse, you belong to sit, you belong at this table. That's right. You should be sitting at this table. And reminding myself of that. Leveraging those cheerleaders and those people within your circle, your community, who can continue to reinforce all the great work that you've done. That's what your girls, your friends, your advocates, your sponsors, they should be doing that for you. And that helps to remind you of how amazing you are. And then, I still believe in this concept of faking it till you make it. And, relying on your background, your experience, and stepping into that space with confidence and belief in yourself and then going and then just, continuing to push forward. So, hopefully those anecdotes are helpful, but there's no doubt that those experiences are real. Yeah. And we should have more candid conversations about what it means, what it feels like, and how we overcome it and create safe spaces for people as they come to these tables.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so as I've gotten older and more senior, have been leaning more and more into my position of privilege as a white woman in leadership. And I've become more and more comfortable with using my time to, as Charisse said, pull, but I more so think push people alongside and up ahead of me. I'm also a jazz drummer in addition to a marketer and a mom.
Badass.
Thank you. And so I've always thought about leadership as leading from behind in the sense of the drummer sits at the back and sort of creates this space and foundation for the team to really kind of crush it out in front. And so from a diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging perspective, I think about how can I, based on the color of my skin and where I sit in this hierarchy, push people out, again, alongside and out ahead of me, whether it's people on my team, my peers, people on other teams. I'll just leave you with this quote that I love from, unfortunately, a white dude, but Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, who says the greatest proof of self-confidence is not having to say everything you know. Just listening. Just listen. Don't feel like you need to say everything you know. And so for me, that's really what I try and practice, is just really listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Charisse.
Thank you.
Thank you to this audience. I know I'm leaving here inspired and having learned, and I hope you all have learned from them. Thank you.